LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the December 5th edition of LiberalViewer Monday Media Mixup. Thanks for joining me. Give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you like what I'm doing here, because I'll be showing you the 10 best, most newsworthy clips I picked out from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, for which it'd be really educational, informative, fair use, media criticism, and political commentary show for you all today. As you can see from the video title, my main topic is Trump calls for terminating U.S. Constitution to make him president now. That is, I'm not making that up, that is like the actual topic, because if you follow Trump on Truth Social, Saturday morning at like 4:44 a.m., he posted on Truth Social here. So, with the revelation of massive and widespread fraud and deception in working closely with big tech companies, the DNC and the Democrat Party, do you throw the presidential election results of 2020 out and declare the rightful winner? Or do you have a new election? A massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Our great founders did not want and would not condone false and fraudulent elections. I guess that could be my political comedy, because that was so ridiculous. This is based on a bunch of tweets from Matt Taibbi. I think it was on Friday, where it was supposedly like bombshell revelations that Twitter took requests from both the Biden and Trump teams to get rid of tweets that they didn't like the Biden campaign was asking them to get rid of Hunter Biden's dick pics, and they weren't even the government at the time. While nobody's even talking about the Trump administration, Matt Taibbi didn't even tell us what the Trump administration was trying to get Twitter to take down and what they may have taken down, and that's actually much closer to like a First Amendment violation, because Trump was president at the time, not Biden. Biden was just like a political candidate. But anyway, I don't want to go into the whole Elon Musk Twitter Matt Taibbi revelation thing. There was like no coverage of that on like any of the news programs, but 4 of the 5 news programs actually did cover the Trump Truth Social post I talked about, or I just showed you. Can you guess which of the 4 or which of the 5 did not cover it? Which of the 5 corporate media, corporate news outlets is not like the others? Of course, it's Fox News, but I'll get to that in a moment when I get past the other political comedy. I like the Saturday Night Live episode that was on a couple days ago. I think Kennan Thompson does a great job showing the stupidity of Herschel Walker, who's running for senator in Georgia. That was a story covered on most of the corporate news outlets. You'll see it mentioned briefly in some of the news summaries I'm going to show you, because tomorrow there's a runoff. It looks like Senator Raphael Warnock, the Democrat, is going to beat the challenger Herschel Walker, but he has said a lot of dumb things, which Kennan Thompson on Saturday Night Live parodied. And it was the very beginning of Saturday Night Live, the cold open, and they had one of the cast members playing Mitch McConnell, and then they chose Marsha Blackburn, Cecily Strong, to play Marsha Blackburn, from the senator from Tennessee, who I've heard of because she's like one of the craziest members of the Senate. And then they like made this weird decision to have someone play Senator John Cornyn from Texas. Why Senator? I don't know why they made those. Why would you like even do it? Does anyone even know who Senator Cornyn from Texas is? Well, apparently Herschel Walker is parodied by Kennan Thompson, doesn't know who John Cornyn is. And I'll talk about that. Those jokes, that parody from the beginning of Saturday Night Live on Saturday after we watch that clip together over here.
You remember former Majority Whip Senator John Cornyn?
No.
And, of course, Marsha Blackburn, Senator from Tennessee.
Oh, Your Highness.
Well, Herschel, the midterms wasn't the red wave we hoped for, but we think you can win this Tuesday.
Yes, the priority now is to get out the vote, because you got this big runoff coming up.
Oh, well, I'm good at those. My ex-wife said all I do is run off.
No, Herschel, the Georgia runoff. The polls show it's very close.
Oh, how close?
Oh, it's so close, Herschel. Warnock is polling at 50.9%, and you are polling at 49.1%.
Well, then, the first priority is to figure out which number is bigger.
The election is this Tuesday. They've already started counting votes by mail.
Right, but you got to remember, they still got to count votes by female.
Maybe in the final push, let's lay low and focus on the message.
Exactly, just like Kanye.
No. On the issues people care about, inflation, crime.
Vampires, werewolves, that scary little gecko. Yeah, we're going to be looking into all of that.
I think Herschel Walker is going to be ruining the day. He talked about the vampires versus werewolves thing. Actually, I almost used that as my political comedy clip last week. The actual clip of Herschel Walker talking about how he wanted to be a vampire until he learned that they could be killed by werewolves and whatever. I believe very strongly that the voters in Georgia are not going to elect Herschel Walker to the Senate tomorrow. I think the parody from Saturday Night Live as part of our cultural zeitgeist explains why that would be. Kennan Thompson, he plays dumb very well, going all the way back to the Good Burger franchise, right? But anyway, I think there's very little doubt that Herschel Walker is like certifiably dumb, whatever the rest of his problems are, and that's because he said a lot of dumb stuff in the campaign, and that's why he's not going to win. I'm predicting it. I'm predicting tomorrow Herschel Walker loses to Raphael Warnock. But anyway, you can let me know what you think in the comment section. And now I'm going to get to the news summaries. Usually I show you news summaries from all of the big five corporate outlets, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News. But actually, CBS didn't even do a news summary. They just got Margaret Brennan got right to her interview with Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, which I'm not even going to show a clip of that. But I am going to show you the other 4 news summaries, all of which I think mention the Donald Trump call to terminate the U.S. Constitution in order to instate him immediately as president or whatever, because he doesn't like that, Twitter took down dick pics of Hunter Biden or whatever. I don't even understand that reasoning. But like I said, Fox News was the one of the 5 corporate outlets that didn't cover that this Trump Truth Social request to terminate the part of the Constitution that stops him from being president immediately. And instead, they spent a lot of time covering the Democrats' plan to move around when the primaries are going to be for the presidential nominee in 2024. I'm not sure why, or it wasn't when I saw the news summary. And I'm going to show you the whole thing. Shannon Bream, and then Lucas Tomlinson, and then Aishah Hasnie in Georgia, where she spends most of her time not even covering the Georgia Senate race, but covering this whole thing about Democrats moving the primaries. And I didn't quite understand why Fox News was focusing on it until I saw the interview they did of Iowa Senator Joni Ernst with Maine Senator Angus King right afterwards. And I'll show it to you right afterwards. But first, here is the news summary. It's Shannon Bream, Lucas Tomlinson, and Aishah Hasnie doing their best to make Joe Biden look really political, with bad news on the economy, and anyway, I'll talk about it a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Your We're looking live at the Air Force One Pavilion at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley, California. Welcome to a special hour of Fox News Sunday from the Reagan National Defense Forum. Each year, national security leaders meet here to discuss threats the U.S. faces around the world. And this year, it comes amid critical political developments at home. President Biden sending his biggest signal yet that he is leaning towards a 2024 run, pressing the Democratic National Committee for a more favorable primary schedule. Georgia is one of the states in line to move up the list, and it's the same state gearing up for a crucial Senate runoff in just 2 days. We begin in team coverage. Aishah Hasnie live from Atlanta, Georgia, with the latest on the ground in the Warnock-Walker runoff. But first, to Lucas Tomlinson at the White House. All right, Lucas, walk us through these potentially huge changes to the Democrats' 2024 calendar.
Shannon, President Biden finished fourth at the Iowa caucus in 2020. His victory in South Carolina helped propel him to the White House, and the man many say most responsible for that win explained the need for this new change.
The person that has won the South Carolina primary has gone on to win, with one exception, the general election.
The new primary order, which still needs to be voted on by the full Democratic National Committee early next year, would make South Carolina the first primary in early February of 2024, followed by New Hampshire and Nevada, then Georgia, followed by Michigan at the end of the month. President Biden made his case for the new calendar in a letter to the DNC Rules Committee, quote, "We must ensure that voters of color have a voice in choosing our nominee. The Democratic Party has worked hard to reflect the diversity of America, but our nominating process does not. Many are noting the new order would potentially be advantageous to Biden himself if he runs again. This week at a White House Tribal Nations Summit, President Biden offered the following boast and gave a hint about 2024.
No one's ever done as much as president as this administration is doing. I don't know about that. Thanks. Thank you.
Friday's jobs report beat expectations, but personal savings rates are the lowest in over 15 years, and a sign high inflation continues to have across the country. Shannon?
Lucas Tomlinson reporting from the White House. Lucas, thank you very much. Now to Aishah Hasnie in Atlanta, Georgia. All right, Aishah, what about there? What are voters saying about these possible changes to the DNC calendar?
Hey, good morning to you, Shannon. Well, I can tell you that Georgia Democrats are really grateful for the committee's decision here. In fact, the group writing this, that the decision reflects the Democratic Party's commitment to diversity and inclusivity, and we are grateful for the committee's recognition. Now, all of this comes, of course, as Democrats here on the ground are trying to re-elect incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock, who currently holds just a narrow lead, about 4-point lead over Republican Herschel Walker in recent polling, despite a series of abortion and abuse allegations surrounding the football star. Now, more than 1 million Georgians have already cast their ballots early, Shannon, as voters know the stakes are high in this race. So if Warnock wins, Senate Democrats, who already have the majority, as you know, gain some wiggle room here. That diminishes the leverage that centrist Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema hold right now, and it also opens up a pathway for the president's agenda for the next 2 years. Now, if Walker wins, the GOP then gets equal representation on Senate committees. That's important to them. It also matters in the next election cycle when Democrats have nearly 24 seats up for grabs as opposed to 10 Republican seats. And of course, Shannon, this could also be a referendum on former President Trump, who handpicked Herschel Walker. Shannon?
So, Aishah, Walker missed out on some 200,000 voters. They split their ticket in favor of Governor Kemp, but then also Senator Warnock. How does Walker try to appeal to those voters?
Great question, Shannon. You know, those split voters were the headline, the story in the general election. They're incredibly important to both of these candidates who are courting those particular voters. Herschel Walker is hoping that Governor Brian Kemp is going to be able to help him woo those voters to vote for him at the polls on Tuesday, because the governor is actually now campaigning for Walker. But time will tell. Of course, Tuesday's results will tell if that strategy will in fact work. In the meantime, some Republicans, in fact, one conservative, as he was heading to go vote last week, told Fox News that he didn't think that Herschel Walker was the best Republican candidate, but he'd rather see a Republican take the seat, so he voted for him. Shannon?
Aishah Hasnie reporting from Georgia.
Did you see at the end of Aishah Hasnie's report that she carried forth this like Republican talking point that, you know, it's better to have a Republican, even if Herschel Walker isn't the best person, at least he's a Republican, and that's why we should vote for him. And I mean, was that even news, what Aishah Hasnie said? Like, some unnamed Republican who I talked to, a conservative Republican, said, you know, I don't feel good about Herschel Walker, but I'm voting for him anyway because he's a Republican. I mean, that's almost like what you would expect the propaganda or the communications arm of the Republican Party to say, not a journalistic organization. But of course, if you've read this book over here, The Loudest Voice in the Room by Gabriel Sherman, you know that Fox News was actually created to be the propaganda communications outlet of the Republican Party, not a journalistic organization. That's something I proved many, many years worth of Fox News bias videos. I think I created over 200 examples of Fox News bias, so we shouldn't be surprised that their reporter Aishah Hasnie is uplifting a Republican talking point. And then in the previous report from Lucas Tomlinson, you see him say, you know, strong jobs report, but they're like searching frantically for some economic indicator that they can say is bad for, you know, Biden didn't do a good job. It's savings rates are low. Savings rates are low, but that actually contradicts this talking point I hear on Fox News all the time about how, you know, the labor participation rate is low because they gave so much stimulus. People have so much money, they don't want to work. And so that, I don't know where they got savings rate is low. That's not even something I've ever heard anywhere before. That was kind of weird. So I wanted to point that out. But I didn't quite understand why it was Fox News, unlike the other four, well, CBS News, Face the Nation, didn't do a news summary. So I only have 3 other news summaries to show you, all of which are very different from what you just saw from Fox News. And why was it they concentrated on Democrats changing the order of the primaries? Well, it's because they have a, like, white grievance story to tell about it. And this next clip, I mean, you know, I see all the time how the diversity, equity, and inclusion advocates talk about how people with white privilege think that when non-white people come along and just ask for equity and equality or inclusion or any of those things, like just to get the same thing that white people have had forever, that somehow white people see it as taking away, they're taking away our rights. And it's not taking away your rights, it's just like making it fair in a way that it wasn't fair before. And I think this next clip really exemplifies that problem, and how Fox News, of course, doesn't even recognize the problem. They're talking about what you just saw reported on extensively in the Fox News Sunday News Summary, how Democrats are proposing that maybe Iowa, an extremely white state that has for decades gotten this special privilege of being the first caucus, like the first presidential nominee decider, and Biden and the Democrats are saying, well, maybe we should look for a more diverse state. Maybe Iowa shouldn't always have the privilege of going first for no reason, but Fox News sees it as a slap in the face against middle America, like white people under attack. And Shannon Bream gives this softball question to Republican senator from Iowa, Joni Ernst, who actually, believe it or not only says it's like a slap in the face to white people, it's like a middle finger to middle America because they don't always get to go first. I mean, why is it that they always have a right to go first? And Shannon Bream, of course, never even asks that question. And they don't even have a Democrat there to give the other side. It's Angus King, the independent senator from Maine, who just says, I'm not a Democrat. I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not saying anything. So it's totally one-sided, total propaganda, white grievance, white privilege, which I will talk about a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Well, I got reaction to Democrats' proposed calendar change, as well as the biggest foreign policy challenges facing our country, when I sat down with two key senators here in California. Senators Ernst and King, welcome back to Fox News Sunday. Good to have you.
Thank you.
We've got a lot of foreign policy to discuss, especially in this setting. But first, some domestic. Let's talk about Iowa, along the first in the country for the political caucuses. President Biden now says the primary calendar needs to change to represent voters and Americans more broadly. The Republican Party of Iowa says the DNC and Joe Biden have just kicked off utter chaos. The president says Democrats are going to get a better candidate who's going to be more broadly interesting and somebody that is going to garner votes for them in the general. Should Republicans consider changing from Iowa?
Absolutely not. And I'm sorely
What do you think she's going to say?
The senator from Iowa, I have to ask.
So I am sorely disappointed that the Democrats chose not to have Iowa as their first in the nation caucus. We have seen a number of pushes in the past to change this. I'm glad that Republicans are staying the course. And, you know, how I feel about this, I feel that Democrats have really given middle America the middle finger.
Senator King?
I'm an independent. They can do what they want.
You're showing up one way or the other.
I don't have a dog in this fight.
You do have a dog in the fight when it comes to cyber. You've been talking about that here at the Reagan Library.
And you see Shannon Bream had no follow-up to Joni Ernst claiming, it's a middle finger to middle America that Iowa doesn't perpetually get to go first and be the... Why should Iowa have that right? And I saw Tom Trask in the live comments along the way there saying that two senators in California, as I mentioned, Angus King is not a Republican. He's an independent who caucuses with the Democrats. So but it wasn't enough of a voice to contradict the white grievance you heard from Joni Ernst about the middle finger to middle America, just because, you know, a very white state doesn't get to go first after it's gone first for decades and decades. You know, I mean, why should Iowa always get the chance to go first? Why shouldn't it be South Carolina or some other state? But anyway, like I said, that was just my Fox News bias example. It's not my main topic, and now I'm going to show you the other three news summaries, since CBS News Face the Nation didn't do one, all of which mention my main topic of Trump calling for the termination of the Constitution to make him president now. That was mentioned on NBC News' Meet the Press in their opening news summary, although they actually really concentrated on what my topic was last week, about Trump dining with anti-Semites, Kanye West and Nick Fuentes, but they folded in the latest Truth Social post from Trump about how we should terminate the articles of the Constitution that stop him from being president now. And anyway, I will talk about that news summary with you all a little more after we watch together over here.
Good Sunday morning. Donald Trump launched his third bid for the White House just 19 days ago, believe it or not. And already his campaign and the Republican Party are being tested as he refuses to disavow the anti-Semitic and racist part of the party that he has aligned himself with for years now. Trump has been endorsed by just a single Republican senator for this third bid, Alabama's Tommy Tuberville. On the House side, his supporters include people like Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Paul Gosar. His former Vice President, Mike Pence, former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, not only they are not endorsing Trump, they're all making moves to run against him in the primaries. And though he announced his 2024 campaign so early as a way to complicate several federal criminal investigations into him, this week a federal appeals court fast-tracked the Mar-a-Lago investigation, ending an outside review of classified documents the FBI had seized from his home and freeing the Justice Department and the new special counsel to use them in its criminal investigation. So now Trump is testing the limits of his ability to be a relevant political figure. And he's testing the limits of the Republican Party as he yet again embraces this extremism and anti-Semitism. After the rapper Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, lost lucrative partnerships with Adidas and others because of an anti-Semitic tirade, Donald Trump still welcomed him to Mar-a-Lago for a pre-Thanksgiving dinner. And Kanye brought along Nick Fuentes, a prominent white supremacist, Holocaust denier, and anti-Semite. Trump has claimed not to know who Fuentes was, but he has not yet disavowed either Fuentes or Ye. Instead, Trump recorded a video expressing solidarity with the mob that attacked the Capitol on January 6th. He did that earlier this week. And then on Saturday, seemingly out of nowhere, called for the suspension of the Constitution as yet another attempt to overturn the 2020 election. Trump has been politically underestimated before with these antics, and in the end, the party has stood by him when he's been their nominee. But the backlash this time is growing.
Anyone meeting with people advocating that point of view, in my judgment, are highly unlikely to ever be elected president of the United States.
It's been clear that there's no bottom to the degree to which President Trump will degrade himself and the nation.
I don't think anybody should associate or be a part of anything with Nick Fuentes.
President Trump was wrong to give a white nationalist, an anti-Semite, and a Holocaust denier a seat at the table. And I think he should apologize for it.
Trump's controversial dinner comes at a time of rising anti-Semitism here in the United States and around the world. This week, the rapper formerly known as Kanye West said he likes Hitler and that he loves Nazis. According to the Anti-Defamation League, anti-Semitic incidents have hit an all-time high in 2021. We had more than 2,700 incidents of assault, harassment, and vandalism reported, and that was nearly triple the number in 2015, before Donald Trump's presidency began. And around the world, according to a report from the researchers at Tel Aviv University, anti-Semitic incidents have increased from 2020 to 2021 by 29% in Germany, 34% in Britain, 54% in Canada, and a whopping 74% in France. Joining me now is the incoming and longest-serving Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. He's returning to the post.
And actually, I don't have a clip of Benjamin Netanyahu, the incoming Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu. I've had many clips of Bibi over the years, and but the NBC News Meet the Press clip I decided to take. If you're looking down in the video description, you can see I under the media mentioned heading, I put a short summary of all the clips I'm showing you, and then under sources you can see the sources of all my clips, and you can look for that. But you see there Chuck Todd was talking about both Donald Trump's meeting with Kanye West and Nick Fuentes that I talked about extensively last week, and then also the Donald Trump post to Truth Social calling for the termination of the U.S. Constitution, and how that's causing problems for the Republican Party. I mean, I don't know. Do you think Chuck Todd had the best of the news summaries? It was certainly better than Fox News Sunday, and it was certainly longer than the CNN State of the Union one and the ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos one I'm going to show you. But I'll start with CNN State of the Union. I mean, I guess if you give points for brevity, this might be the best of the news summaries. Jake Tapper here on CNN State of the Union talking about the Georgia runoff, what the Republican House might look like, and then Donald Trump's problems with his meeting with Kanye West and Nick Fuentes, and calling for the termination of the U.S. Constitution, and how that's causing problems for the Republican Party. In the 90-second news summary from CNN State of the Union yesterday, that I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, where the State of our Union is wondering what is on Georgia's mind. Voters are turning out in record numbers this week in the runoff between Senator Raphael Warnock, the Democrat, and Herschel Walker, the Republican. On Tuesday, Democrats will find out if Warnock is headed back to the Senate, giving his party some breathing room as they try this month to pass key priorities before Republicans take over the House of Representatives in January. Now, this week we got a hint of what a Republican-controlled House could look like, as a handful of lawmakers on the fringe of the Republican Party, frankly, vowed to block leader Kevin McCarthy's bid for Speaker, while the party squirms around former President Trump's dinner with notorious anti-Semites and Holocaust deniers, and Trump's refusal to disavow them or assail their twisted ideologies. And as if that weren't enough, Trump's new call Saturday to, quote, terminate rules in the Constitution so as to reinstall him as president. Coming up, we'll talk about December priorities with Ohio Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown, who is set to defend his seat in 2 years in increasingly red state Ohio. Plus, Republican Congressman-elect Mike Lawler, who is warning his Republican colleagues not to cause chaos on their first day in charge. But we begin today's show with foreign policy and remarkably strong uprising against authoritarian governments in China and Iran, while here in the U.S., President Biden underscored ties with European allies and the unified West's opposition to Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine. Joining us now to discuss, Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Secretary Blinken, thanks so much for joining.
So I don't know, was that the best news summary? It was definitely gets points for brevity. It included like the foreign policy issues, the in China and Iran, the uprisings against authoritarianism, and because of the interview with Antony Blinken, but it also mentioned the anti-Semitic dinner that Trump had that I talked about in my live stream last week, as well as the call to terminate the Constitution. So, I don't know, it might have been the best of the news summaries. And then the final news summary, since there are only 4 this week, is ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, which really kind of concentrates on the changes in the House of Representatives, but still is better than the 5-minute Fox News Sunday news summary that did that weird concentration on the change in the order of the Democratic primaries that has been proposed. But anyway, I'll talk about that a little more after we watch this final news summary together over here.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. 1 month after the midterms, the new Congress is coming into focus. Georgia's Senate runoff between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker will determine if Democrats have 50 or 51 votes. And last night, the House was finally decided when California's John Duarte became the 222nd House Republican, mirroring the Democrats' narrow majority in the last Congress. The big question now for the GOP, will Kevin McCarthy have enough votes for Speaker? The Democrats made history with their choice this week, voting unanimously to make Hakeem Jeffries their leader. He will be the first black lawmaker to lead a party in Congress, and he joins us now. Good morning, Congressman. Welcome.
Good morning, George.
And congratulations to you. What's your
And I don't have a clip of Hakeem Jeffries, but kudos to NBC News' Meet the Press for covering that. The change in the Democratic leadership team, which was also covered last week, and Hakeem Jeffries was on a couple of the programs last week, and I didn't take any clips from him. I'm anticipating multiple Hakeem Jeffries clips in the future, but anyway, I don't know. I think that news summary was a little skewed towards changes in the House of Representatives because they were starting off with their interview with Hakeem Jeffries. That's like a bias that I've talked about that all the cable news stations have. If they have like an exclusive guest, they tend to bias their news towards that exclusive guest. And so, yeah, you saw Chuck Todd there kind of skew... George Stephanopoulos there skew the ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary towards the change in the House. Republicans now have 222 members, and then Democrats elect new leadership, including the first black leader of a party in the House of Representatives. Hakeem Jeffries will take that role as minority leader, meaning the minority of members in the House. Not that he is a minority, but he's also a minority, which makes him a trailblazer, a glass ceiling breaker or whatever, and that's important, but not something I'm going to feature in my newsmaker clips. I still now I'm going to give you the three newsmaker clips after I show you a panel discussion about my main topic, Donald Trump calling for the termination of the U.S. Constitution. I'm going to start with a panel discussion about that on NBC News' Meet the Press. Chuck Todd introduces the panelists, and I thought this was important. Normally I don't show pundits talking about issues on the panel discussion because, that would be my commentary on someone's commentary on the news. That's like too meta to really do. But the first panelist talking here is Mark Short, who is a longtime chief of staff and advisor to former Vice President Mike Pence. And so he's actually speaking for a power in the Republican Party. And then I went through the Ashley Parker and Yamiche Alcindor clips because I think actually Yamiche Alcindor made some important commentary on this. And anyway, this kind of sets up the newsmakers. After this, I'm going to show you 3 Republicans getting cross-examined by the cable news anchors on Trump's call to suspend or terminate the U.S. Constitution and so that he can be president right now, immediately installed as president against any of the articles of the Constitution that stop that from happening. So I'll show you Representative Mike Turner first, after I show this panel discussion, I'm going to show Jake Tapper do kind of a weak cross-examination of Republican Representative Republican Representative Mike Lawler, and then Margaret Brennan does a better cross-examination of Republican Representative Mike Turner, and then I will end with clip 10, the cross-examination of the week, where George Stephanopoulos really grills Representative Dave Joyce. But before I get to those 3 Republicans getting cross-examined increasingly well, from Jake Tapper to Margaret Brennan to George Stephanopoulos, first here's Chuck Todd with Vice President Mike Pence's Chief of Staff Mark Short, and then Ashley Parker and Yamiche Alcindor talking about how this is a big problem for the Republican Party. But first, Mark Short, who is kind of a spokesperson for Mike Pence, and Chuck Todd, to his credit, points that out at the beginning of the clip that I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
There is no active presidential campaign for Mike Pence, right?
Correct.
That's right. But you are advising him, and you could be involved.
There's no way that I know where that's going to go, Chuck. But yeah, certainly I've worked with Vice President for 15 years and honored to do so.
Well, I just wanted to get that out there so viewers know on that front. But I'll let you answer the first question here. Donald Trump, what he's done with Kanye West, this Nick Fuentes, what he's done with the Constitution, is this time different?
You know, Chuck, I don't think it's a good platform for a presidential campaign to say that we should just set the Constitution aside. And I feel like we've seen this, I think, digression continue ever since January 6th. And, you know, candidly, as far as putting the Constitution aside, I candidly think that's what he asked the vice president to do 2 years ago when rioters were attacking the Capitol, and he asked the vice president to overturn the election results. And so I think, unfortunately, this has been a consistent trend. Now, I do think that there is concern from many conservatives about the belief about what happened in the Twitter revelation, believing that media has had a double standard here. I mean, I know when Mike Pence was vice president of the United States, his son was getting a paycheck from the government to serve the United States Marine Corps. When Joe Biden was vice president, Hunter Biden was getting tens and tens of thousands of dollars from the communist Chinese and from Ukraine, which was Joe Biden's portfolio. I think there has been a double standard. But the president's remarks, the company he's keeping, I think, is way beyond the fold.
And I think if you look at it also after January 6th, it hits a little differently. In the 2022, the midterms we just had, it wasn't that Democrats won so affirmatively. I was just down at the DGA with these Democratic governors, and even them, where they really are the power center of sort of the next generation, even some of them said, look, I benefited from a pretty mediocre MAGA opponent. But so again, it wasn't that Americans so much voted for them in some cases, but they voted for sanity. And meeting a former president, meeting with a racist, a white nationalist, an anti-Semite, calling to overturn the Constitution is not a particularly sane stance.
Yamiche, people say, we've been here before with him.
Well, to
Is
me,
this time different?
the fact that we even have to ask that question shows you that there's still this grip that former President Trump has on the party and his popularity among some in the base, these extreme MAGA people who are still supporting him, the fact that they could still win primaries. That to me tells me that there's something to the fact that he could still win the nomination. We've been here before. This feels familiar to me. We were here in the Access Hollywood tape when everyone found out that they had a daughter and a mother and were saying that they didn't want former President Trump to be the nominee. That we were here again after January 6th when we saw people leaving the White House in droves, and then everyone turn around and at least the senators who had the power to say, we're going to convict you in this impeachment, they all decided, actually, this is the line that we're not going to cross. So I think, yes, does it feel different? It feels different because we've been fighting anti-Semitism and racism for a long time, but I still think that it's too early to say whether or not he's completely out of the ability to win this nomination.
I mean, I think Democrats and sane Republicans...
So, yeah, I mean, I kind of agree there that the fact that we're still asking if, like, is this where he crosses the line shows this is not where he crosses the line, like Yamiche Alcindor said there. And you saw there Mark Short, the once and probably future chief of staff to Mike Pence, giving this sort of weird semi-Republican response where, you know, it's not a good look for Republicans, but the thing you're going to see in the next three clips is none of the actual Republicans being cross-examined want to say, well, if it turns out Trump is the nominee in 2024, this claim here in his post-to-truth social where he says that we should suspend the parts of the Constitution that stop me from being installed as president right now, calling for the end of the U.S. Constitution, somehow doesn't disqualify him from being the nominee of a major party. And, I'm a big believer in the U.S. Constitution. If you become one of my patrons on Patreon at the link I put right underneath the video here, at the $5 or $10 level, I will send you this ACLU Constitution, as well as this weatherproof vinyl #LiberalViewer sticker. I'll send you both of those with either a one-time PayPal contribution of $5 or more, or a monthly Patreon contribution of $5 or more. Those are the first two links under the video in the video description. So I've been a big believer in the Constitution for a long time, but apparently Trump wants to suspend or terminate those parts of the Constitution that stop him from being installed right now as President of the United States. And the next three clips, the final three clips I'm going to show you, are Republicans getting cross-examined by cable news hosts about what Trump said, from like worst to best cross-examination. The worst one is actually from Jake Tapper on CNN's State of the Union, which is kind of disappointing because usually Jake Tapper is one of the best cross-examiners, but this week he had on as his guest the newly elected Representative Mike Lawler from New York, who is definitely a moderate Republican. He got elected in a swing district. Well, I'm not going to get into all the details of who he upset to get elected, but I don't think that Jake Tapper did a great job of cross-examining him here. He just says, that he disagrees with Trump, and if he's going to be the nominee, he's going to have to do something different without ever getting, I think Jake Tapper almost treats the terminate the Constitution thing as a joke, but it's not really a joke, and I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Welcome back to State of the Union. I'm Jake Tapper. Already there are questions about how Republicans will manage their new House majority. Former President Trump is bringing his own brand of chaos back to his party, just as Kevin McCarthy is trying to convince a rebellious conference to back him for Speaker. My next guest says that fight would hurt the Republican Party just as it takes control of the House. And joining me now to discuss, incoming Republican Congressman-elect Mike Lawler of New York. Congressman-elect, congratulations on your victory. I do want to ask you about something that the frontrunner for your party's presidential nomination, former President Donald Trump, wrote on his social media platform this weekend. He says, quote, "Do you throw the presidential election results of 2020 out and declare the rightful winner, or do you have a new election? A massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution," unquote. So, Congressman-elect, what is your reaction to Donald Trump calling for the termination of the U.S. Constitution?
Well, obviously, I don't support that. The Constitution is set for a reason, to protect the rights of every American. And so I certainly don't endorse that language or that sentiment. I think the question for everyone is how we move forward. I ran for Congress to address the challenges that we're facing and be forward-looking. Frankly, I think people are tired of looking backwards. I think people are tired of discussing the grievances of prior elections, and they want to know what we're going to do to address the challenges. And I think the former president would be well advised to focus on the future if he is going to run for president again.
All right. Let us move on because right now there's a big House leadership race, and you are supporting.
So yeah, Jake Tapper just let him move on after he said, he has to look forward, not backward, if he's going to run for the presidential nomination, but nothing about well, should someone be able to even run to be president of the United States if they say the Constitution should be terminated? At least the articles that stop me from being installed as president right now. I mean, that is so yeah, Jake Tapper didn't really cross-examine him at all. I guess he's just a member of Congress elect and won't be sworn in for another month, but still not a great answer from Mike Lawler and not a great cross-examination from Jake Tapper, who often does the best cross-examinations. The best cross-examination is going to come from George Stephanopoulos against this centrist Republican Dave Joyce in clip 10, the final clip I'm going to show you. But before I get to that, I'm going to show you something in between. This is CBS News's Face the Nation, where Margaret Brennan had on Representative Mike Turner and asked him, and kind of followed up more than you saw from Jake Tapper, but not as well as you'll see from George Stephanopoulos. So this is kind of like the intermediate level of cross-examination that I will talk about with you a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
This may seem a basic question, but all elected leaders swear to uphold the Constitution. Does calling for its suspension, is that disqualifying for a presidential candidate?
It's certainly not consistent
You know I'm
with
asking the question.
I do. It's certainly not consistent with the oath that we all take.
So yesterday, the frontrunner for the Republican nomination, the standard bearer for your party, posted on Truth Social, and we know he lost the 2020 election, but continues to claim he did not. A massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Should the standard bearer for the Republican Party, the frontrunner for the nomination for the presidency for your party in 2024, say this?
Well, first of all, I vehemently disagree with the statement that Trump has made. Trump has made, 1,000 statements in which I disagree. There is a political process that has to go forward before anybody
Constitutional conservatives are pretty clear about where they value the Constitution.
Right, exactly. But
is there any scenario with suspending the Constitution?
You do get to pick the questions, but I do get to pick my answer.
I know, I'm trying to get you to answer the question I'm asking.
There is a political process that has to go forward before anybody's a front runner or anybody is even the candidate for the party. And
do you
I
condemn
think
him
that,
saying
and I
something
believe,
like this?
Absolutely. And I believe, answering your question, that people certainly are going to take into consideration a statement like this as they evaluate a candidate.
Mm-hmm.
So that was it. That was the extent of Margaret Brennan's cross-examination, which was, like I said, better than Jake Tapper, but still not enough to, why wasn't it that Republican Mike Turner would say that Trump should be disqualified from running for president, or at least he would not endorse him or vote for him, since he has advocated for terminating the Constitution, at least to the extent it stops him from being installed as president right now because of the massive fraud that exists in, his imagination or whatever. But the final newsmaker clip I want to show you is the best cross-examination, the cross-examination of the week. And as I've mentioned, I like to pick out the cross-examination of the week because I used to be a criminal defense attorney, a public defender, and one of my, superpowers was cross-examination. That was one of the things I was best at. That's one of the things that public defenders and criminal defense attorneys have to be best at, because they don't have to build a case, they don't have to do the direct exam to bring in the evidence. They have to tear down the evidence and cross-examine and confront, especially police officers. That was my favorite thing to cross-examine. But here we have Representative Dave Joyce, a centrist Republican, over on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, where I believe George Stephanopoulos does the cross-examination of the week, really putting it to Dave Joyce, where he won't do what I was complaining in the earlier clips the other Republicans wouldn't do, which is if Trump is the Republican nominee, are you going to say he's disqualified since he has made it clear he doesn't support the U.S. Constitution, our founding document? He wants to terminate the parts that stop him from taking over the presidency that he didn't really win. And anyway, I'll talk about that clip a little more, the final newsmaker clip, after we watch it together over here.
I have to ask you a question about Donald Trump's statement yesterday talking about suspending the Constitution. Your reaction?
Well, you know, when President Trump was in office, I didn't make a habit of speaking out of his tweet du jour. I don't know what came out on his, whatever his new social platform is, but, you know, people were not interested in looking backwards. The people who gave us the majority, and again, we barely won it. We barely eked it out. So let's be straight about where we're at. They gave us an opportunity, and we need to perform, and we need to care about the issues that they care about, which is how do they lower the cost at the pump. And I know when I go into Heinen's that the price of everything I buy, eggs, bacon, toast, it all goes up, right? It hasn't gone down. And again, people have to live within a budget. What are we doing to make sure that they fall within that budget? What are we doing to make sure that their lives are better? And how do we continue to make sure that they have the jobs and the economy is stable and they have the jobs to be able to live and take care of their family?
But Donald Trump was your nominee in 2016 and 2020. You voted for him in 2016 and 2020. Now he's talking about suspending the Constitution. Can you support a candidate in 2024 who's for suspending the Constitution?
Well, again, it's early. I think there's going to be a lot of people in the primary. I think at the end of the day, you will say whoever the Republicans end up pick, I'll fall in behind because that's...
Even if it's Donald Trump and he's called for suspending the Constitution?
Well, again, I think it's going to be a big field. I don't think Donald Trump's going to clear out the field like he did in 16.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking you if he's the nominee, will you support him?
I will support whoever the Republican nominee is. And I just don't think that at this point he'll be able to get there because I think there's a lot of other good quality candidates out there.
That's a remarkable statement. You'd support a candidate who's come out for suspending the Constitution?
Well, you know, he says a lot of things. You have to take him in context. And right now, I have to worry about making sure as a Republican governance group and the Republican majority that we make things work for American people. And I can't be really chasing every one of these crazy statements that come out from any of these candidates at the moment.
But that's an extraordinary statement. You can't come out against someone who's for suspending the Constitution?
Well, first off, he has no ability to suspend the Constitution. Secondly,
but he says he's for it.
Well, you know, he says a lot of things that, but that doesn't mean that it's ever going to happen. So you got to accept exact fact from fantasy. And fantasy is that we're going to suspend the Constitution and go backwards. We're moving forward, and we're going to continue to move forward as a Republican majority and as a Republican conference.
I don't see how you can move forward if your candidate is for suspending the Constitution, but thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for
coming up. More from my interview with crypto mogul Sam Bankman.
He says a lot of things. You have to put it in context. He says a lot of things. But, you know, he can't suspend the Constitution, so we shouldn't even worry that he claims that he wants to, or... That was pretty ridiculous, and I thought, like I said, I think George Stephanopoulos did the best job of cross-examination because he made that particular Republican look even more ridiculous than the previous two, although none of them looked really great. Representative Dave Joyce getting cross-examined by George Stephanopoulos. Mike Turner did not look great getting cross-examined by Margaret Brennan. I don't know. I think Jake Tapper let Mike Lawler get away with too much, even though he's such a great cross-examiner most weeks. But anyway, that is the last of the clips I'm going to show you. I hope you appreciate the time and effort I put into watching the news programs and picking out the clips and cutting the clips and then uploading them with my commentary and criticism to share with you as a live stream every Monday. And as I mentioned in the last couple weeks, it looks like I'm going to keep doing this Monday Media Mix-Up all the way through the 2024 election. I appreciate those of you who support me with Super Chat contributions on my live stream, with the direct PayPal contributions at the link under the video description. And I just got a new patron on Patreon during this broadcast. I won't say who it was, but one of the live viewers decided to support me in a significant amount on a monthly basis, so thank you for that. I appreciate all those financial supports. Like last week, I was thinking that video would never get monetized because it had the words assault weapons and the word the word anti-Semites in the title, and it did get demonetized for most of the viewing time, but I won it on appeal after no one was watching anymore. I don't know what's going to happen to this video, but I appreciate the people who support my videos just by showing up for the live viewing or during when it's a recorded program. I appreciate every single view, every single thumbs up. All my subscribers, click on the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber. And of course the financial support from PayPal and Patreon and the join button right underneath the video. Thank you all for joining me. I will have some more updates about my continuing this program for another couple years, and also updates about, you know, no more Dash and Sandy clips, but maybe sometime this month or next month there might be a new kitten to add to the family that will be some new clips of unnamed kitten. I guess we have to fix the flooring first, but I mentioned that earlier. And anyway, thank you all for joining me. I will be back next Monday and every Monday, probably for the next couple years. And until then, or until I have some other reason to upload a video, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.